These are no longer rumors. We heard it from George R. R. Martin himself. It is true. The Jon Snow sequel is in development. So many negative first impressions of this concept, and I am no exception. I immediately felt this was a bad idea. However, I am a glass half full person, and I'm going to look for the best of the situation. So, without further ado, these are the top 5 things we need in a Jon Snow Game of Thrones sequel. Coming in at number 5, Evil Starks. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, I think it's difficult to pin the title of evil on one character in particular, as all remaining Starks, and I'll include Jon in this as well, ended their stories in Game of Thrones as heroes or protagonists. None of them were objectively evil. While Sansa seemed a bit power-hungry on occasion in the final seasons, I don't see much of a motive there. Arya seems unlikely as a candidate, and I also don't know that she'd make an appearance. But with this being centered around Jon Snow, the only thing that seems compelling that's left for Arya is a potential conflict with the Faceless Men. As I feel like in the show, Game of Thrones, that was sort of unresolved. So, that leads me to Bran. A king is always a good magnet for the commoners to express their grief. I think it could be fascinating if there was some form of a revolt and Jon's lineage played a role as the people declared Jon the rightful heir, or the people could take issue with what appears to be a Stark dynasty that answers to no one, with Bran having the crown and Sansa independent in the north. Also with Bran, his power I think was for the most part unrealized. Can he time travel? Can he change the past? Does he hold the entire realm's secrets? If there were to be a huge political conflict, there's no way to leave the King of Westeros out of it. But his connection with Jon can be tied back to both of their journeys beyond the Wall. If Bran's power becomes fully realized, he's the only character that could make the turn for villain a large enough threat to up the stakes. What if he becomes powerful enough to warg into Drogon? Or if he can time travel and save the Night King? What if Bran is evil? What if he knew what was going to happen in King's Landing with Daenerys burning up everything and going mad, yet he decided to do nothing? This could be a compelling storyline. Coming in at number 4, I have Drogon. Now, I just mentioned the concept of Bran taking control of Drogon, but even if he doesn't, I still believe Drogon would have to be revisited. You can't just have this real-life, flying, fire-breathing monster going about freely, can we? Is anyone still a dragon rider? Well, the only known living Targaryen, that being Jon Snow, may be a candidate. I think if they are trying to neatly attach this to Game of Thrones, it is worth noting one of the only things discussed in that final small council meeting was the whereabouts of Drogon. While he may not be a true plotline on his own, Drogon could be a very powerful tool for many potential storylines in a Game of Thrones sequel. Coming in at number 3 is kind of a forgotten character, Daario Naharis. So last we saw of Daario was in the season 6 finale, and if there ever was a season 9, I believe this is a conflict that's just begging to come to Westeros. He loved Daenerys and was always more than willing, but happy to kill for her. I think he's the one human in the story that will not be negotiated with. I don't think the truth of why Daenerys was killed by Jon will be believed by Daario, but if he does believe the stories, he was the first to embrace the idea of Daenerys being a conqueror, and I think he'd support her actions. It could be interesting to see almost a triangle of conflict, with Daario angry with the entire realm, Bran having a revolt against him, and Jon being at the center of both conflicts. He being the one who killed Daenerys, and being the true heir causing a revolt against Bran. While Jon may wish to not be involved, these conflicts stemming from his actions and existence may be what it takes to pull him back into the mix. A showdown between Daario and Jon would be inevitable fan service for sure if Daario is brought back into this story. Coming in at number 2, White Walkers. Trying to keep these stories connected, I think doing the opposite of what Game of Thrones did would be interesting. We all know of the White Walkers, so introducing them to us early would be unnecessary. So allowing the political drama to build and allowing a later season reveal that White Walkers are still a substantial threat, or they've become weaponized by Bran with his powers, could be an interesting concept. Many theorized before Season 8 that perhaps Bran was the Night King. This could be a very intriguing way to do that. I think this could also right the wrongs from Season 8 where the White Walkers' motives were fairly unclear. This could make a lot of more sense out of those final seasons, and if there were a more human motive behind their existence, I think that could be interesting. This is what I'm hoping for, at least, because it would give us one last chance to deliver a promise from Game of Thrones that I feel we never got. And that leads me into number 1. And that is the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai. Now, you don't need to be a huge book fan to feel let down that this was not part of the Game of Thrones final season. I feel like this was built up for so long, and even though it seemed obvious to be Jon or maybe Daenerys, or perhaps they'd subvert expectations and have it be someone else, the subverted expectation moment happened when, well, it didn't. They just never did anything with the prophecy. And that's fine that they didn't. There's many who believe the prophecy in the books is not real, but they just never really addressed this. They never put it to bed. Also, the Red Priests are still alive and well back in Essos, and if Daario is traveling back, a Red Priest may accompany him as they believe the prince that was promised is still to be delivered. I think Jon would make the most sense here, considering this is a series that'd be centered around his character, but I'd like to see the Azor Ahai prophecy come to fruition or finally be debunked once and for all. I prefer that it's true, as it would be the great response to an enemy like an evil Bran with an army of White Walkers. You intertwine Daario and the Second Sons coming after both Bran and Jon as well. I think there's enough options here to do an interesting and very entertaining sequel series.